They came out of Starfall like a verdict. 37 warships of the Iron Tally, dropping from the between space into the orbital shell of dust, in a formation so precise it looked less like an invasion and more like a sentence being read aloud. Drace and Fell stood at the forward viewport of his command ship and watched the rust-orange planet fill the glass, and his flat dark eyes held no triumph. Only the arithmetic of a man who had already counted the dead and found the number acceptable. The bombardment began before the last ship had finished its Starfall translation. Amber-white light bloomed across the orbital shell as the Tally's ventral arrays cycled through their first firing solutions, each strike walking methodically across dust's surface toward the dome clusters that housed the Coalition's sensor relays and surface-to-orbit batteries. The planet shuddered. From orbit, the impact craters looked like punctuation. Serethi Voss felt the first strike before she heard it. She was standing in the deepest command junction of the Metalite Warrens, her pale grey eyes fixed on a holographic projection of the orbital shell, when the floor moved beneath her salvage cable boots, a long low tremor that sent orange-brown condensation streaming down the walls in thin rivulets. She pressed one scarred hand to the Metalite and felt the next strike coming before the display confirmed it. She had 17 minutes before the assault craft reached the surface. She spent 14 of them dividing everything she had. Lysara received the command channel transfer in her flagship's bridge and did not acknowledge it immediately. She stood at the command rail with both hands on the alloy, watching the Iron Tally's formation on the tactical display. 37 hulls against her 11, tonnage ratios that made the math simple and the decision simpler. Her right hand trembled faintly against the rail. She closed it into a fist and kept her eyes on the display. When she finally opened the channel to Serethi, she said only, "I have the line. Go." Kale Thyros was already moving through the Warrens when Serethi reached him, his prosthetic left hand trailing the Metalite wall as he walked, the exposed joint mechanisms clicking softly in the amber-lit corridor. He had the tunnel map had memorized it the day they arrived on Dust, because he was the kind of man who memorized the exits before he sat down. He told Serethi the choke points without looking at her. She told him the timeline without softening it. They moved in the same direction and did not discuss what would happen if the timeline was wrong. Halia Vaughn was at the third junction when the second orbital strike hit close enough to crack the ceiling. She did not flinch. She was already marking the load-bearing supports on a scratched Metalite map, the salvaged irrigation cabling on her left wrist, catching the amber light as she worked. Around her, civilians moved in the organized urgency of people who had rehearsed this, not because anyone had told them to, but because 12,000 people who had survived a death world long enough to reach this moment had learned to read the tremors. Halia looked at the map, then at the ceiling, then at the map again. She circled one tunnel in the scratched notation and did not explain why. In the orbital shell, Lysara was already fighting. She had committed 4 ships to a screening formation ahead of the main fleet, using Dust's chemical storm layer as a sensor degradation field. The Iron Tally's targeting solutions would be cleaner in clear space, so she gave them no clear space. The Tally's lead elements adjusted their formation, tightening their grouping to compensate, and Lysara watched them do it with the expression of a woman who had been hoping they would. She opened a firing channel to her second and third ships and spoke the coordinates she had calculated before the battle began. The orbital exchange lasted 9 minutes. Lysara lost 2 ships, one to a broadside that found the gap between its screens, one to a Tally frigate that had been running silent in the planet's shadow and revealed itself at the worst possible moment. She watched both ships come apart on the tactical display, their hull signatures blinking out in sequence, and she did not close her eyes. She was already calculating what the loss of those 2 hulls meant for the next 9 minutes. Below, the first Iron Tally assault craft touched down. They came in 3 columns, as the intelligence had promised. One toward the northern dome cluster, one toward the eastern ridge where the oldest access shaft broke the surface, and one, the heaviest, toward the central plane above the seed chamber's primary tunnel entry. They moved with the precision of a force that had studied the terrain, which they had, and with the confidence of a force that expected to hold it by nightfall, which they would not. Drace and Fell watched the landing telemetry from orbit and made one adjustment. He shifted the reserve column's vector 3 degrees east toward a secondary access shaft that the Coalition's defenses had left lighter than the others. He did not explain the adjustment to his staff. He had seen the same thing in the terrain data 2 days ago and had been waiting to confirm it from the landing feeds. Now he had confirmed it. He marked the new vector and moved on. Serethi reached the first choke point ahead of the Iron Tally's vanguard by 4 minutes. 4 minutes was enough to place the barricade. It was not enough to feel good about it. She stood at the junction where 3 corridors converged and watched Kale's people slot the salvaged habitat segments into place with the practice speed of people who had been told this was coming. And she felt the tremors in the floor. Not orbital strikes now, but the footsteps of the assault column working its way down the access shaft above. Vex Karan's voice came through the relay node in short bursts, clipped and operational, each transmission carrying the flat stillness of a woman who had decided panic was a luxury she could not afford. She told Kale the second assault column was 40 meters from the eastern shaft's lower junction. She told Lysera that the Tally's orbital formation was rotating its heaviest ships to cover the northern approach. She told Serethi that the central column was moving faster than the intelligence had projected. They had found the secondary shaft Fell had marked, and they were using it. Vex said all of this in the time it takes to breathe twice, and then the relay node behind her went dark, and she moved to the next one without breaking stride. The ceiling of the 4th corridor came down in a section 12 meters long when the orbital strike hit the dome cluster directly above it. The sound was not an explosion. It was a compression, a sudden intimacy of stone and metal, and the amber light going out all at once. 3 of Halia's civilians were in that section. 2 made it through the bulkhead before it sealed. 1 did not. Halia heard the bulkhead close from the junction ahead and did not stop moving. She had the map. She had the next route. She had the terrible arithmetic of a person who had learned to count the ones who made it rather than the ones who did not, because the ones who made it still needed her to be moving. The first contact came in the eastern corridor. A squad of Iron Tally ground troops in matte black composite armor, their interlocking ring sigils catching the amber emergency light, pushed through the shaft entry and found the barricade and the people behind it. The exchange was brief and violent, and left 3 Tally soldiers and 1 Coalition defender in the corridor. The barricade held. The corridor did not smell of anything for a moment, and then it smelled of everything. Kale moved to the second choke point without being told. He had already moved 2 of Halia's civilian groups deeper into the Warren before the first contact, routing them through the lower passages that the Tally's terrain maps would not show as viable. Old scavenger routes, barely wide enough for a person moving sideways, cut by generations of dust survivors through the metalite over 3 centuries of slow desperation. The Tally had maps. The people of Dust had memory. Kyle had both. Veylan Drace moved through the lower warrens with Tessith Karan 3 steps behind him, his long ink-stained fingers writing on his palm as he walked. The same Progenitor phrase, over and over, the characters worn into his skin by repetition. The lower passages were narrower here, the metalite walls pressing close, the amber emergency strips spaced further apart so that the darkness between them was long and absolute. Tessith's notation tablet swung at her belt, its microglyphs catching the light in fragments. She had not spoken since the second orbital strike. Veylan had not asked her to. They moved toward the deep blue-white pulse that had begun, faintly, to be visible at the far end of the passage. The seed chamber's progenitor substrate, alive and counting. The second barricade fell not to the iron tally's weapons, but to the ceiling above it. A strike on the surface, whether orbital or from the assault column's own support fire, no one would ever be certain, sent a shockwave through the metallite that cracked the junction's load-bearing arch and brought 3 meters of compressed stone down across the barricade and the 6 defenders behind it. Cale heard it from the next junction. He did not go back. He sent 2 people to confirm and told the rest to move, and when the confirmation came, 6 lost, the junction sealed by the collapse. He marked the tunnel map and found the next choke point and moved to it, because that was what the moment required. Tessith was at the primary shaft entry when the central column's vanguard made contact. She had a sidearm and a barricade, and 8 people, and the particular quality of stillness that comes over a person who has decided they are not leaving this position. The iron tally soldiers came down the shaft in good order, their armor absorbing the first exchange, and the corridor filled with the close-quarters violence that no tactical briefing ever quite prepares you for. The specific geography of a space too narrow to flank, too low to stand fully upright, too loud to hear orders. Tessith's binding scars ignited up her neck and wrists, the luminous veins blazing white gold in the amber dark, and the tally's front rank hesitated for exactly 1 second at the sight of them. She used the second. Halia Vaughan detonated the load-bearing tunnel she had marked on her map. She did it from the junction ahead, with a salvage charge she had been carrying since Jessard, and the detonation brought down a section of ceiling 40 meters long, directly above the second assault column's forward element. The sound was enormous, and then was nothing. The metallite absorbing its own collapse, the corridor simply ceasing to exist, the tally soldiers inside it becoming part of the geology of dust. Halia lowered the detonator and looked at the map and circled the next tunnel. Her hand did not shake. In the orbital shell, Lysera's remaining 9 ships were fighting a battle of angles. The iron tally's numerical advantage was real, but Dust's orbital geometry, the chemical storm layer, the debris field from the pre-war defense platform that had been destroyed in the first bombardment salvo, gave her corridors of engagement where the tally's formation mass worked against them. She had been studying this geometry for 3 weeks. She used it now with the cold efficiency of a woman spending a currency she had saved for exactly this moment. Her right hand hung still at her side. She gave every order with her left. Lysara lost a 3rd ship, a frigate that had been screening the northern approach, caught between 2 tally cruisers when the formation shift she had anticipated came 3 minutes earlier than her model predicted. She watched it go dark on the tactical display and felt something that was not grief but was adjacent to it, the specific weight of a commander who knew the name of every person on that hull and would carry those names for the rest of her life. She gave the next order before the weight could settle. There would be time for weight later. There was not time now. Drazen Fell received the first casualty report from the surface and read it without expression. The eastern column had been slowed by a barricade and a ceiling collapse. The central column had made contact at the primary shaft, but had been held by a defender whose binding scars had disrupted the front rank's advance, a detail that he noted and flagged, because a bound individual at the primary shaft entry was not in the intelligence assessment, and things that were not in the intelligence assessment required attention. He marked the flag and committed the reserve element to the secondary shaft, which was open and moving. He was not losing, he was being slowed. The distinction mattered. Vex Karan's relay network was down to 5 nodes. She moved between them in the lower warrens, her dark grey field uniform blending with the metallite walls. her pale green eyes reading the node status displays with the flat operational stillness of a woman doing triage on a living system. She let 2 more nodes go. They covered approaches that were already lost, and rerouted their traffic to the 3 that covered the seed chamber's approaches. She sent the new routing to Kale and Serethi and Veylan in a single compressed burst, and then moved to the last functioning node and sat down beside it and waited, because there was nothing else to do, and she was very good at waiting. The 3rd barricade held. Kale had built it differently from the others. Not a single line, but a staggered series of partial obstructions, each one forcing the tally's advance to slow and angle and slow again, the corridor's geometry working against body armor and formation discipline. The tally's forward element lost 4 soldiers to the approach before they reached the barricade itself, and when they reached it, they found it unmanned, because Kyle had pulled his people back to the next junction the moment the tally's lights appeared at the corridor's far end. He was not trying to hold the barricade. He was trying to hold the time it cost to pass it. Serethi fell back from the primary shaft entry when the tally's 2nd wave came through. She fell back in good order, 2 people covering, 2 moving, 2 covering, 2 moving. The way Kale had drilled it, the way it looked in the abstract and felt entirely different in the amber dark, with the ceiling trembling and the binding scars burning up her neck like a second pulse. She reached the junction behind the shaft and sealed the bulkhead, and stood in the new silence with her back against the metalite and her chest moving hard, and she looked at the relay node on the wall and waited for Vex's voice, and it came. Veylan reached the antechamber of the seed chamber as the episode's final tremor moved through the deep rock. Not an orbital strike, but the detonation of Hallier's 2nd charge, somewhere above and to the north. The shockwave traveling through 300 meters of compressed metalite to arrive here as a whisper. He stopped at the antechamber's threshold and looked at the blue-white light pulsing through the geometric seams in the chamber's progenitor substrate, and his ink-stained fingers went still for the first time. Tessith stopped behind him. The phrase on his palm was legible in the chamber's light. He had not yet spoken it aloud. The chamber was waiting. Everything was waiting. Above them, the battle continued, and the warrens trembled, and 12,000 people who had survived a death world were still breathing, which was not victory, but was not nothing. And in the arithmetic of this particular night was the only currency that mattered.